Well, welcome to another episode of the Grazing Sheep Podcast. I'm your host, Big Tom Perkins, along with Dr. Cameron Meyerly. And Cam's just about over his illness, and mine's just starting to peak, I think.
Yeah, it's just the occasional cough every once in a while. I was a little concerned yesterday. We threw your symptoms into WebMD and thought you might have leprosy and
Yeah,
you're going to
well,
let.
I did. I took my weekly bath, and that most of that washed off.
Okay, okay, good,
I
good.
had to soak a while, but most of it washed off. So
Yeah.
the
So
concern
between
was that.
the COVID or the flu
Well,
or
my head feels just blah. My stomach feels blah. My whole body just feels blah. So I put in, other symptoms, blah, blah, blah. Came up with diphtheria and um, and maybe typhoid. So
nice.
so we're gonna see how that rides out. I don't know if I have a fever or not. I used my thermometer on one of the sheep and I must have left it in there because I can't find it.
Great.
So
And of
I'm not,
course, only have one thermometer.
well, yeah, why would you need two?
You don't.
So it just makes sense. So if I don't die in the middle of this episode, that would be good. I keep losing my voice too.
Yeah, and if you do croak, we are looking for another host of the Grazing Sheep podcast.
Yeah,
So we'll
yeah,
just put that
yeah, you can
job
email.
advertisement out
Yeah,
there.
you can email me at bigtomperkins at
Yeah,
gmail.
yeah, yeah. Find my contact somewhere out on
Yeah,
Google. But yeah.
that worked out good.
So
So
you just
just
got back
yeah, I just
from an eventful last week, and it is fun. I was going to ask you, since you live in Pennsylvania, it won't be Groundhog's Day when this releases, but it is Groundhog Day today.
yes,
And I
and
was curious what the results were. Have
I
you
hate
heard?
I hate Phil. He says 8 more weeks or 6 more weeks or whatever it is. I don't know why they just don't shoot that groundhog.
And be done with it.
It's,
And then
it's
my
only
question
it's only
is,
been 20 years since he predicted an early spring.
oh, is it really? Oh,
Yeah,
that's
only
funny.
20 times has he ever done that. It's always
Yeah.
we're gonna have more winter. I hate
Now,
that.
is it the same winter we've been having? Because for those that are in the kind of eastern Midwest, I mean, we're looking at 55 degrees all next week. So is it? I'll take it. I don't love the mud. It's been treacherous. Um, but in terms of winter weather, I think we've had one snow that I wouldn't even call substantial. It was a dusting at best.
Well, anymore we know winter doesn't really mean like necessarily freezing temps and a lot of snow. It just means mud.
Yeah, that's
So,
what it's been.
so it's a minimum of 6 more weeks of mud.
Mud. It's
And
probably longer than that,
Phil doesn't
unfortunately.
care. He lives in a hole.
He does. Well,
It
that's he
affects
should
him at
care.
all.
If
Well,
it's just gonna rain,
you would think so.
you would think. So anyway, back on topic. A little tangent there. You were at the Ohio Grazing Conference,
Yep.
and were the keynote speaker. I don't know if they had a keynote speaker, but we're gonna call you the keynote speaker because from what I hear, got nothing but positive comments and feedback, and
Yeah.
had to stick around to talk to people all afternoon into the
Yeah.
evening.
Yeah.
And
Nobody threw anything at me. Nobody booed. You know,
yeah,
only
and
a
we're not
few.
going to get too in depth on what you talked about because I think we've done a pretty good job. It was a virtual farm tour,
Right.
essentially,
Right.
and what your operation is, what your operational goals are. And I think we've discussed quite a bit of that here on the podcast. And so, um, yeah, that went well, and that's super exciting. But we thought we would at least share some of the fun topics that you heard about. And we put a plug in a couple weeks ago about this conference. And I was curious, did the food meet expectation?
It was phenomenal. I,
Was it?
I'm telling you, you couldn't go to any restaurant and pay I can't remember if the fee was like 40 or $45 for the 2 days. And it included lunch and all these snacks, massive amounts of donuts and coffee and chocolate milk and for the 2 days. It was unbelievable. It was just crazy. Every break you would come out and there'd be these long tables set up with cheese and beef sticks and I don't know, bologna and all kind of stuff. But it was all, like homemade stuff. It was absolutely fantastic.
I don't know how they're making any money. That's what I don't understand, because we were just talking yesterday on, uh, the Appalachia Grazing Conference that's
Hmm.
every other year,
Yeah,
and I think registration cost for that's $250,
yeah, yep.
and I
And
can guarantee there won't be as much food.
no, they'll have some food out, but it is nothing like what is the Ohio Grazing Conference.
Yeah, and that's we're probably
They
putting
they
the
are they are these small little plates that that you go through the line with, fill up on your cheese and all that. And of course, I'm trying to heat mine up because basically I'm a pig, and I couldn't eat like half of it. It just
really?
it just filled you up so fast. It's like I don't know how to describe it, but it's like all good dense food.
Right, and
You
then you
know?
remember that you just filled a plate up 45 minutes ago, and that's
Yeah,
part of the part
yeah.
of the
And then
explanation.
at the end, yeah, and then you go back to your motel room and you're like, I should eat dinner, but I'm not even remotely hungry.
Right,
You know,
right.
and I start panicking, because my life revolves around food, and I think, well, what am I going to do at 10 o'clock if I'm hungry? Because there is no McDonald's in Mount Hope, Ohio.
No, it's there's not much in
And
Mount
another
Hope,
fun fact I learned
Ohio.
while I was there is it's really not called Mount Hope. It's actually Millersburg. That is
Mm,
that is the mailing address of everything in Mount Hope, Millersburg.
really?
Yes, because
The suburbs.
they don't have a post office.
Yep, the Amish suburbs of Millersburg, Ohio.
Yep.
Lovely. Nice.
Uh, on the
So
on the way over, ran into lots of horses and buggies. We didn't actually run into them, but
right,
I
okay,
I
okay.
was concerned about it at times because
Yeah, it's a little scary.
you'd be going 55 mile an hour and you come up over the knoll and there's a horse and buggy.
And for those that aren't familiar with that area, I mean, it's northeastern Ohio, and you mentioned coming over the knoll. Some of those are steep,
Well, some
blind
of it's
curves.
deep enough you
Um,
couldn't see on the other side.
yeah, I remember there's a place there that sells dimensional lumber, Kime lumber, and it's, I believe, in Millersburg. It's in the same vicinity, and I remember we were coming home, and it was must have been, like, quitting time right before we had left the place, and
Hmm.
it had gotten dark, and it was nothing but bicycles with lights on them. It was
Yeah.
terrifying. I mean, it was very scary, but, yeah, we're fortunate you didn't hit anything. I know we were down at, when we were down at WVU, we were hauling lambs up there, and it was always interesting to get the truck and trailer through some of those over some of those knolls without hitting anything or anybody, but yeah, you made it there safely, and you mentioned had some phenomenal attendance numbers.
Oh yeah. So the conference was Thursday and Friday. And so on Thursday they told me there was 1,100 people there. And on Friday there was 1,300 people there.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It was a lot of people, and if you ever get the opportunity to go, you should go because you will never see so many Amish people in one place. I'd be
Yeah,
willing to bet that probably 90% of the attendance were Amish
I believe it,
or
and
or
that's,
Mennonite, maybe.
coming from that Penn State extension system, there was a huge audience that took advantage of those extension materials, and we have to think what they're not heading off into the nearest large city
Yeah.
to take office jobs.
Yep.
Most of those are agrarian and at least on the home farm, and are still tied to the land in general.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of events that occur there, and we have to think, how are they getting their information? A lot of it is word of mouth or some print material, so that it makes sense that there would be a that much of a following in that area, and people show up to hear the information and to learn.
Oh
And
yeah.
so taking from that point, we've talked about the food. I've got that box checked off, talked about attendance. What was a couple of the talks that you sat in that really intrigued you, throughout the 2-day conference?
Well, on the first day, it's mostly about dairy cattle or beef cattle, but just cattle. And the second day is more about small ruminants, as goats and sheep. And on that first day, there was only one speaker who was not Amish or Mennonite, and he was a guy from up in New York that had he grew up in a family business, and his family assumed that he was going to take over the business one day. And a friend of his had a farm, and he was throwing in the towel and decided he was going to sell it. And this guy, Carrie Estes was his name, just said to the friend, "Would you sell it to me?" And he said, "Yeah, sure. If you want to buy it." So they made arrangements and ended up buying that farm. And he was big into reading the Stock McGrath Farmer and things of that nature, and was all interested in the regenerative agriculture. And he was going to graze this farm and the whole bit. And so he took all his money and tore the whole farm up and planted the whole thing into rye grasses and started running ads to custom graze, and he got zero replies. So here he is with his 200-acre farm, all this grass, and nothing to put on him. So he contacted a guy in Texas, I think it was, and ordered in 100 dairy heifers that the guy would gather up for him. And they made a deal and brought all those dairy heifers in there. And he raised them up, turned the bull in with them, and didn't see anything happening. Had a vet come out and check them and found out every one of them were free martins.
Yeah, and if you wanna explain what a free martin is for all the sheep people on here.
Well, free martin is, if correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a product of twins.
Yes,
Isn't that a bull calf and a heifer calf born as twins?
correct.
Something like 95% of the time or something, those heifers will not breed. They will
Yes,
not.
they're not fertile.
Right.
Um, and so that's understanding a little bit from the dairy industry, which you grew up in. Are you shocked that the load of 100 dairy heifers he picked up from some guy in Texas, are you shocked that those were not reproductively sound, just the best dairy genetics people could find?
Yes and no. I would have thought it would have been hard to put together 100 free martin heifers.
Well, those are the ones that everybody's selling.
Yes. Yeah,
And
but
if
I still would have thought they'd been hard to put together.
and if I'm
I
a
would have thought it'd
trader,
been hard to find 100 of them, all about the
if
same.
yeah, if I'm a trader, I can like trader.
Yeah.
In his situation, you could also call me the
Yeah.
other trader because betrayed his trust maybe, and I'm assuming he didn't go back to the same gentleman to buy dairy calves off of.
Well,
But if I'm a trader,
that was the funny part because a year later, after he found this out, he contacted the guy, and he bought another load of 100 and telling the guy, "I do not want free martins." And the guy said, "No problem." And he shipped him another load of 175 of those were were free martins too.
and those were purebred dairy calves.
Yeah, those were still Holsteins. And
Oh
then
my goodness.
so the next time around he bought from somebody else. And as far as I know, those just went for beef. And he bought from somebody else, and he wanted like Jersey Holstein crosses. And he just figured that would be a lot harder to get free martins. And so he bought from somebody else, and it turned out I don't think any of those were free martins. But
Okay.
his goal was to breed those and then sell those as bred heifers. And he couldn't get enough of them sold, so he had to scramble and build a barn and start milking.
Oh my goodness.
And
See,
to this
that's
day, and to this day, he's a grass-based dairy farmer.
he's still milking cows. I
He knew absolutely nothing about farming when he started.
Yeah, he
So
knows a lot now.
he knows a lot now. It was kind of trial by fire, and he was a really good speaker, really entertaining. So I definitely couldn't fall asleep through that one.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of lessons to learn from that. I don't know what he paid for those upfront, but sometimes if that deal's too good, it's too good to be true.
Yeah.
And before we jump into this, we start from plan A, and that was to graze other people's cattle, to do
Hmm.
custom grazing. And, all the eggs in one basket, we jump into it, and all of a sudden there's no demand for
Well,
for it.
that's just it. You always hear in whatever enterprise you're going to start into, you need to know what your market is going to be.
Right,
In that instance, he needed to ahead of time already have that market established where he had people saying, "Yeah, if you plant your farm to this, we'll bring animals there." That would have been his market, and it was just
and have it locked down beforehand.
right. It was just another reminder to know your market before you get started. We
Right,
hear it all the time in the sheep industry too. You're going to get started in sheep. The first thing you need to know is what's your market going to be, and
right.
that bases everything else you're doing. We talk about this all the time on this podcast too. That if you know when you want to market your lambs, then you start and back up from there, and that gives you when you need to be breeding.
Right.
So all that makes, a heck of a lot of sense. But he was a really good speaker. There was another fellow there that talked about composting, and he was an Amishman, and I've come to the conclusion after going to this twice that most Amishmen aren't that great of presenters. Um, I just don't think they have the practice, and I don't think they have the access to the technology maybe to practice. But his presentation was, like I said, on composting. And basically what we did was we kind of just watched videos of him running his compost turner that he did make. I have to give him credit for that for sure. He made this thing and he designed it and had some, people help him with the materials and so on. And he was running it on a skid loader and the skid loader had a 60 horsepower engine on it. Which
Mm.
didn't quite understand that part of it, but maybe that's what he needed. Maybe the skid loader just didn't have enough oomph to run this thing. But it was fun to watch the compost turn.
Oh, I bet it was. Yeah, I bet it was, and there's some significant benefits. You got a significant amount of compost out there, which we probably ought to do an episode on that. I don't think we've done one yet,
Yeah.
but you're taking in a bunch of tree chips,
Yeah.
wood chips
Yeah.
from trees that have been pulled out and then taken care of, and they're dumping them there. And you're so on that turning point, you're having to go out with the skid steer and turn it every so often.
Yeah, that's the plan. It's a lot easier in the summer months or when things are frozen.
Right,
Yes.
right.
And I don't have any concrete, to do this on or gravel or anything like that. And so it gets pretty slippery pretty fast. And if you've ever run a skid loader, you don't worry about burying it. It's just you can't go anywhere because it just slides around.
Right.
So you try to go into the pile, and as soon as you touch the pile, your wheels just spin, and then you can't move.
Right. Right.
You
Right.
end, you end up using the bucket to push yourself backwards to get onto something that's not quite so slippery.
And try to get out.
Yeah,
Yep.
so I started another pile all right before the weather turned. That's been it's been sitting there stagnant for a couple of months. But come spring, or things start to dry out again, then I can get back in and start turning that, and it'll get active pretty quick.
And you've got that wood to break down to the point where you're spreading it on the field
Yeah.
and seeing good results from that.
Yeah, if I were to actually screen it like the pros do, it would you would just have nothing but, the fine particles in it.
And then would you take those screen chips and put them back in the barn?
Probably could, but I more likely would just take the screen chips and just put them back into the next compost.
Okay. Okay. Because I know a number of producers that are running some wood chips at the bottom of their bed pack.
Well, that's what we
Some
do.
Okay. Okay.
but those are just, just straight wood chips.
And you're collecting a lot of that urine and, because it's between the bed pack and then concrete in your
Right.
barn,
Yep.
collecting that composting and then, uh, turning until it breaks down to the point of spreadability.
Yeah, so we pull that out of the barn and it's already starting to compost.
Right.
Yeah, the amount of heat as you're pulling that out is crazy. You,
Yeah.
you could feel it, on your face, from the skid loader. And we just pile that in a big pile and then we haul that up to the up back here where where we have the compost row and add more wood chips to it and then start that turning and so on.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing is you have to have the space to do it because it does take up a significant amount of space, especially if you're gonna turn it, of just something that could be in the way in a lot of operations.
Hmm. Yeah, it definitely does. There's like no grass growing there now from all the turning and stacking and and all that, and that kind of bothers me. But it's in a good area where there's not runoff or anything to that nature. So if there is, I mean, it's just going to go into grass. And but it's amazing how thick and tall the grass is on the outside of that area.
Mm,
There's definitely something in there that's making it go. Now I just
yeah.
got we're going through a nutrient management plan. And so they pulled some manure samples and they pulled some compost samples.
Have you gotten those back yet?
Not yet. So I'm interested to see what the difference is between the two. But I know this guy talked a good bit about, when you're just out spreading manure, a lot of that is going to volatilize. And so you're going to just lose it into the air.
Right.
Um, and then with the rains, a lot of that is going to wash away as opposed to, percolating down into the soils.
Right. And incorporate into that where we need to get it into that top portion of the soil.
Right. And then with the compost, it just becomes a much more stabilized product. It's not high in NP and K by any means by that point
Right.
because you've used up all that nitrogen to break down the wood. But the big thing with the compost is I saw where Dale Strickler had talked about you're just creating more surface area for bacteria to colonize on.
Mm,
And the bacteria is what, really drives your drives your grasses to grow and all that. And it theoretically over time, this should raise your um, soil organic levels too.
right.
Soil organic matter, yeah.
Yeah, now we've talked about it practically for an episode, but we it'd be a good one in the future, especially now, for a lot of us who are getting ready to lamb in a barn or, maybe have some deceased animals that we could take advantage of that side of composting,
Mhm.
for getting rid of those carcasses. Unfortunately, that's a side effect of raising livestock that
Yep,
we're gonna have dead
yep,
stock as well, but
yep.
so anyway, so you had that conversation at the conference, and then, in terms of small ruminant programming, was there much after that?
So on the second day, which was Friday, um, they had a guy there from just outside of Indianapolis in, I'm assuming that's Indiana.
Yeah.
Correct? Okay. As soon
Yep.
as I say it, I'm like, "Is that right?"
No.
Indianapolis, Indiana. You can tell I don't get out much. Um, and he had a goat farm. And I don't remember how many acres he had, or if he even said how many acres he had. But he started out years ago with his kids as a 4-H project and bought a buck and a couple of does. And now he's a little over 800 goats.
Oh, wow.
It's it's pretty insane.
Yeah. I mean, I would assume he has to have a decent amount of space unless it's a confinement operation.
No, it's pretty much pasture based for most of the, well, all the summer. He doesn't do much through the winter. They go into some kind of
Okay.
confinement and housing. But it was just insane to see that many goats. and they're mostly a boar
That's crazy.
and Spanish. Is that right? Spanish uh cross.
Yep, that is a type of goat. So
Yeah.
yeah,
What
they
he's
could be 4 Spanish crosses. Yeah, I mean that is a pile of goats for I guess central if he's around Indianapolis for central Indiana. And I would assume he's probably south of Indianapolis. I don't know. I don't know the guy, but I what's he doing? Does he deal with much parasite issue
well,
in
he gave two talks in the morning. It was about parasite management, and it just he spent a lot of time. He's a veterinarian, by the way, too, that practices
okay.
in Indiana, and he spent a lot of time, going through the whole, parasite cycle, and how that whole thing works. And I would imagine there are probably people there that didn't know anything about it.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, I'm sitting there thinking, "Oh, great, another parasite cycle thing,"
Another life site. Yep.
another
Yep.
life cycle to watch this whole thing go through.
Yep.
But he does a lot of Pamancha scoring, and he tries to only worm what needs, or deworm, I guess, what needs dewormed. Yeah, we always say
Okay.
we're going to give them worm medicine. Yeah, we're gonna worm them, kind of thing. We're not adding worms, but
Hopefully not. Yeah.
no, yeah, no. But goats tend to graze pretty tall, so he lets his forages get pretty tall, so because they will go in and take the tops off of things, and that definitely helps. And
Okay.
got some wooded areas that he continually putting these goats into.
So he's taking advantage of that browsing
Right,
behavior
right.
to kind of fight that parasite life cycle. Uh, and that was a common thing. A lot of people just assume because they browse at that higher level, they're
Hmm.
not getting infected, and that's a lot. That's true, 100%.
Oh yeah,
Uh, the only issue is when they're forced then to we put them in a situation where they have to have more grazing behavior, and those goats throw an asterisk on there. As long as those goats are willing to do it,
yeah,
then all of a sudden we run into some pretty severe parasite issues,
yeah.
and that's with that many, and that was what was brought up at ASI. One of the NSIP topics during that meeting, the first night, was they've seen substantial growth in goat herds
Oh yeah,
joining NSIP, and
yeah,
that's we've known that that's been a possibility for a long time, and it's exciting to see a lot of goat producers finally take that jump, take that leap into genetic selection through some EBV, some data measurements or data capture, and then turning those into usable values to go and select from. Um, and so that I mean that's something. If I had 800 goats, I think I'd at least be interested. The ones that I'm never deworming, the ones that are always a FAMACHA of 1 or 2, those cherry red
yeah.
eyelids. Finding those does, maybe pulling out 50 to 100
Hmm.
and start collecting some data on those and just intensify my genetic selection. But I mean that's a lot of goats.
Yeah.
A lot of goats in Indiana. Um, so that's I mean, that's exciting. That's a good talk.
Yeah, and it was interesting to see. I had a few goats. I don't really plan on going back into goats because goats get out, and that's the number one thing you need to know about goats is you can put
Is
them.
they get out.
You can put them wherever you want, but they're going to end up where they want. And
Right.
that's
It's
pretty.
hard enough to run sheep with single strand polywire.
Yeah,
You're not doing it with goats.
yeah. And so goats walk up to pretty much any fence and say, "Oh, I don't want to touch that because I don't want to get shocked," and so they just jump over it.
Right.
Don't,
Right.
don't touch any of it. They're pretty smart like that. Where sheep walk up and say, I don't want to get shocked, but I think I could run through that fast enough that it won't
Yeah.
hurt.
And
That's
there's still some grass over here, so maybe I won't put forth the effort
yes,
to run through it.
pretty much.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
The coach just look and say, "Oh, this is cute. I can just jump over this." And
Yeah.
it works. But the highlight to me of these conferences is just talking to people.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I get a big kick out of just walking up to people and just start talking to them.
Yeah.
Just kind of always interesting, and there wasn't, I won't say that there was anybody that really stood out, but it's just fun to talk to people and just kind of maybe eavesdrop, I guess, and kind of listen to what other people are talking about, and
Right.
that was a lot of fun. I like doing the presentations and all that. This is by far the biggest crowd I did a presentation for, but
With a standing ovation.
standing ovation. Women were crying. It was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, one
I
off,
did want to ask one
one
of
off.
my
We started a
favorites.
slow clap, and it just built from there. It
It
was,
yes, it just grew. I'm sure I wasn't in attendance, so I cannot confirm that. But I did want to ask you though, were you able to attend the what I thought the highlight meeting of the or highlight topic of this meeting was um, the privilege of being a farmer's wife. And
no,
I
and
was
really,
curious,
I really wanted to go to that. I really did.
and it overlapped with something else that you were already
Yeah.
stuck in.
For those that
Okay.
don't know, at the Ohio Grazing Conference, and maybe other conferences too, because it's so heavily attended by Amish, um, they have a lot of what they call women's sessions, and they're just discussions and presentations on what they think would interest women. And I thought that that was kind of an odd one to have, the privilege of being a farmer's wife. I thought that was, I guess maybe in the rest of the world we would think, that's not very
Yeah, I
politically
tell Megan
correct.
this I tell Megan this probably on a daily basis,
Well, you should have
and I I do not do that because I value my life. So,
done it. Absolutely.
and it's the realistically, it's the other way around. It's I'm privileged to have someone that's as understanding with me when I'm out ultrasounding sheep until 10 p.m. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I was just curious on that session. That one,
So
I
who
did
knows?
have a
It
chuckle.
may not have been that at all. That may have been tongue in cheek. They may have just made jokes the entire time. I don't know, but yeah, I thought that was a little over the top for a title, but
Yeah.
certainly didn't hear anybody complain about it. But
Right.
yeah, but they do always have them, there if you're interested in some of those that are geared more towards women, I guess.
Right. And really the like the homekeeping or homesteading aspects of being a partner in that
Yeah.
farming operation. So yeah, it was very intriguing.
Yep. So, well, we're running up on our time here, Cam, and I gotta go. I don't know. I gotta find some kind of roots or something. I gotta start taking here for this diphtheria. I gotta what the cure is for that. The diphtheria and the typhoid. I don't know. Hard to
It's probably not moving sheep every day
I'm probably just gonna sit here on the couch or lay on the couch and get all snuggled up under my blankie and watch Oprah. And
and rest.
just
Yep.
just watch episode after episode of Oprah until I get recouped.
Get motivated.
Yeah, but through the day I'm the only one on the farm, so I still have to go out and keep doing chores, move sheep, move fence, and all that fun stuff. So, well, it's been good catching up with you, and so thank you for listening to an episode of the Grazing Sheep Podcast. You can reach out to me if you want at bigtomperkins@gmail.com. There's a Facebook page. You can go on there, like and follow. And so we'll talk to you next week there, Cam.
Sounds good, Tom. Get better.
I'll have to try. All right. Bye.